The answer is this one here, D. Polar bear lineage is paraphyletic. And so that is not supported. And the reason why it is not supported is that it's actually the brown bear lineage that's paraphyletic, not the polar bear lineage. So just be careful with that. The polar bear lineage starts potentially here,
Draw a little
right?
line. There it is. Yeah.
The brown bear lineage, though, starts over here, and that is most definitely paraphyletic because the polar bears are involved here. So just be careful. The other way that you can go about it is by looking at all of the other things. Mitochondrial DNA is maternally inherited, so this tree could result from hybridization of polar bears and brown bears. The answer is yes. So we haven't talked specifically about mitochondrial DNA, so don't worry about, whether if you indicated that, it's not a big deal. We're gonna teach you that stuff now. Polar bears could re-evolve from brown bears. It is technically possible, given that the common ancestor here was a brown bear, right? Because here it may not have been a brown bear, but certainly if we have brown bears that are a species here and brown bears that are a species here, then brown bears are also very, very likely to be here. And therefore, the way that we would interpret this potentially is that polar bears evolved from brown bears, and more specifically the brown bears that are now represented in the ABC Island population. Okay, polar bears may have evolved quite recently in a short period of time. Also supported, given that polar bears are much newer on the scene than brown bears. And then if we put black bears here, even much more new than that. So it was a challenging question, just there to kind of, again, get you to review and to go back and reinterpret.
And just remember, when you're thinking about paraphyly, polyphyly, really, as you see those words, think, are they not monophyletic? That's the biggest way to work through questions that deal with clustering like that, phylogenetic groups.
Yeah. Okay.
So there was your question.
There's the question.
Now,
and let's
so we can see.
And we'll stop before we get to the ecology stuff. Yeah?
Sure.
Okay.
So you're looking at, because trees can grow in all sorts of different orientations, we've got polar bears right at the bottom of the screen, polar bears, brown bears, and black bears. And what we've seen here is that you're looking at the kind of species level phylogeny here in black, that they've separated out. So we can look at hybridization events by comparing these phylogenies that is only passed on by the female and compare them to nuclear phylogenies created using nuclear DNA, which is a combination of both male and female. So this is the phylogeny of the nuclear genome, and they separate and they show you what your eyes show you, different species. Now when we overlay the orange of the mitochondrial DNA, we see different things. We see on the right hand side that the black bear still says the same thing. The black bear is the black bear. However, we look at X number of years, maybe 1 million years ago, plus or minus, if that small break is at 0.2 and the larger is at 4 to 5. We see a split across between the polars and the black and the brown, the grizzly bears. So there's jumping around that's happening here. And if we take a little bit more of a look, we see what is likely the introgression of brown bear mitochondria into polar bears about 160,000 years ago. So we've got now the mitochondrial DNA, the story of what it looks like, and then the red overlay of the actual tracing of why this ABC island leads to a paraphyletic looking brown bear clade.
So let's step back a little bit, because sperm, if you think about it, is really just a package of nuclear DNA, right? The egg that comes from the female bears, and many, many females that reproduce in that way, is packed with all of the organelles, including the mitochondria. So when a sperm fertilizes an egg, it is delivering a nuclear package but not the mitochondrial package from the male. So if anybody's missing that background, that's what we're talking about here. And so what we can do by tracing the mitochondrial DNA, we can create this matrilineal history, the history of the relationships of the mothers through time, because it is more preserved, right? It's easier to follow. The nuclear DNA of an individual comes as a combination of both the egg nuclear DNA and the sperm DNA. So it's a little bit more difficult to tease out. And what we're showing here is that there is evidence of hybridization, right? If we follow along through the matrilineal
So that
traits.
phrase, introgression, that's what that's delineating, is that
Right.
the mitochondria of the brown bears has appeared in that polar bear lineage, which says that about 160,000 years ago, there were successful breedings, wildly successful interbreedings between these two species.
It turns out, and this is what blows my mind, okay? If we take a look down here, right, we're looking at the polar bear here, and then there's a stop, okay? And then there's this, you know, kind of hybridization event. And there seem to be multiple hybridization events potentially, right? But there's this hybridization event that then carries on the polar bear lineage. And therefore, if you take a look at the mitochondrial DNA, what it's suggesting of all polar bears currently on the planet, they are the result of a hybridization event. So they are not, so now your interpretation, pure polar bear, yeah, like it's hard to suggest this because they are polar bears. They are a different species.
Yeah.
And their mitochondrial are more closely related to brown bears than they are to.
So what it could suggest is that they're the result of one hybridization event, or a period of time in which the only things that survived were those which hybridized. And this is not a rare thing in lots of different species. There are lots of species. We were talking and asking you, who are sitting on the north shore of Lake Erie, how you weathered the storm on Monday. All of the toads that are down there, you have an endangered species of Canadian toad there. The
You always bring
toad.
it back to the toads.
It's exactly the same. It's exactly the same
Yeah.
story. None of the Fowler's toads in Canada have Fowler toad mitochondria, except at Long Point. Different story. But they all have American toad mitochondrial DNA. So these kinds of the drifting downstream of events through time gives us, we can use DNA to kind of re-examine those stories and figure things out about past evolutionary events. And so this is not uncommon. This does not change. Well, I guess we're going to ask you a question about this, but
it doesn't rewrite textbooks
No.
because it's something that's happening all the time, and it does really speak to the fluidity of the species concept, right? To me, and this is going to probably, but to me, species is kind of a statistical thing, right? Like there's ranges within which you know, you can define a species, and then there are these beautiful fuzzy margins, right, where things like this can happen and should happen.
yeah,
right?
it doesn't bug me. Species are, we've talked about this before.
Yeah.
Species are spatio-temporally bounded individuals that have fuzzy edges. And so at physical edges of ranges, and in time as speciation takes place, there's fuzzy boundaries where things can retain their ancestral ability to interbreed. And that doesn't preclude the fact that they're now different species. This is just evidence that, yeah, they're still pretty close.
Okay. I think we're going to stop it for, we have so much more to tell you about polar
'Cause
bears.
bears, oh
Because
my God.
bears. So we want to wrap it now into the ecology. We did the evolution stuff. The ecology will blow your mind, right? Okay, but
One more question at the end of that slide for them to think about.
one more question?
Yeah, those ones.
Oh, here's a question.
So these are things for you to puzzle over as you're thinking and you're studying.
Yes.
Are there polar bears today? Why or why not? Which phylogeny is accurate?
No right answer. It's your interpretation and your explanation that will make it the right answer.
Yeah.
Okay? We're going to skip a whole bunch of slides. We're going to start with this question, and we're going to do all of this stuff, I promise you, because it's really awesome. This is even awesomer. And we're going to skip it. We're not going to not do it, though. what I want to do is
We're
bring
gonna come
you
back.
to the homework, because we want you to do this homework. Here's a table with scales, a temporal scale, and a biological level of organization scale. We've skipped a few, don't worry about it. See if you can fill out this table though. For the polar bear, specifically about adaptations to the cold, okay? Start filling this out, and hopefully it'll help identify some of those differences between all of those different categories, and you get to Google polar bears, so yay. And with that,
Yeah, take care of yourself.
Yep.
Take care of the ones that you care about, and be physically distant and socially connected. And we'll see you on Monday, unless you're going to stick around, because we're going to be here
we're
for
gonna be here.
a couple minutes.
Yeah.